What's the scariest way to die? Probably having your head sawed off with a pocket knife by a terrorist group or something of the like. I was on a thread a few months ago that was asking paramedics what the worst case they'd been called to was. Someone said he had gotten called to a car accident, a really bad one. Everyone was dead except for a toddler. The toddler's body had been smeared the op's exact word under the car and has essentially no body left. The car was resting on him in such a way that the pressure of the car was the only thing keeping his blood in him. I imagine his lungs were at least partially intact. The paramedics had to move the car off him, knowing he would die. He was essentially just a head. I imagine that would be at least one of the worst ways to go. RIP baby, and I hope the paramedics recovered from this experience. I heard about a similar case where something had fallen on a worker, crushing the lower half of his body, and they knew as soon as they lifted it he would die. They were able to get his family there to say goodbye before lifting the object. I think it was something to do with bones getting so badly crushed that it's like poison or something. A paramedic was telling us this. Buried alive. Knowing if you manage to get through the wood of your coffin, you will likely be smothered in 6 feet of dirt. Killing you anyway would be terrible. Ed just breathe heavily until the oxygen was gone. Stuffed and locked inside a dryer on the highest temp. Bleeding to death waiting for your wife to get home and call 911. Or drowning in a vat of gasoline that's on fire. Something like burning to death that causes you so much pain before actually dying. Being executed would have to be the most stressful way to die, and being eaten by a pack of dogs, that probably sucks too. Being executed for something you didn't do but everyone thought you did. Trapped under ice. I have been reading about ice diving lately and all of the hazards. Last night I had an all too real dream about a winter dive, and it all goes well until my air level is getting low and I cannot find my exit hole. The panic kept increasing as my tank pressure dropped and I began freaking out. I woke in a sweat, completely on edge. This happened to my dog years ago. Dad was walking him by a fast but small dog was a Jack Russell stream, just deep enough for a small dog to go completely under the surface. Anyway, very cold day in winter, so the stream is frozen over. Small one-man bridge to cross while the stream flows under. Dog was really into drinking water at the stream by a bit that wasn't frozen. I didn't see what happened, but I guess my dog might have got too confident, fell into the stream, and started the drift down the river to the bit where it had actually frozen the surface. Dad saw the dog panicking under the ice and jumped from the bridge straight onto the ice, breaking it and literally grabbing my dog as it drifted under the now broken hole in the ice. Survived and had a good 6 years after that. Drowning. Not knowing for how long you can bob up to get a gulp of air. I always thought drowning in the ocean, but there was an oil spill over most of the water and it's on fire. So you have to choose being burned alive or drowning. Dying in a slurry pit. I'm from Northern Ireland and I'm not really sure how far spread the term slurry is, but slurry is basically all the runoff from livestock, sleds/yards, which is half mixed manure and urine and half water. It gets stored in huge tanks for either disposal or to be turned into fuel, broken down into methane, etc. Basically, when servicing the huge tanks for whatever reason, people can very quickly get affected by the fumes and lose consciousness and fall into the vats and die. I've heard of it happening at least 3 times. One time 2 people died, the second trying to rescue the first, but the gases knocked him out. TL. Doctor falling into a vat of animal chute then drowning in it, or suffocating on fumes. Vivisection would be pretty bad. It means dissection, being taken apart while the subject is living. It's been done as punishment, but it's also apparently been done for science. Anesthesia is out of the question as they need to measure the pain as well. You can look it up, Wikipedia, for example, and they have more information. Also, there's a sort of anime on Netflix, I say sort of because it's CGI, not traditional animation, called Ajin. It's about a few people who are immortal, and there's a scene where some scientists get one strapped to a table and they're testing the limits of his immortality. So they take a drill and one says start with his teeth and all you hear is his screaming, and it shows people in an observation room reacting to it, and it's pretty chilling. So you can only imagine what all else they did to this guy who basically couldn't die. I think destroying the head would do it, and that's it. Being scared to death, I guess. Eaten alive by a swarm of bugs, crawling into your mouth and ears and eyes and nose. Anything from ye old medieval torture killing devices. Getting hooked by Roadhog. VX nerve agent. Yeah, the shoot that North Korea probably used to kill Kim Jong-nam. VX can be airborne or in liquid form and can last for months given the right conditions. The effects of this agent, as with all nerve agents, are terrifying. What it does is prevent the proper operation of an enzyme that acts as the body's off switch for glands and muscles. Without an off switch, the glands and muscles are constantly being stimulated. They will tire and no longer be able to sustain breathing function. Short version, you twitch, spasm, seize as your muscles randomly contract until you lose the ability to breathe. You are conscious through most of this until the paralysis sets in and you pass out. This can take a few minutes to start, or it can be hours later. But the scariest part of this shoot is that all it needs to kill is a few tiny drops on your skin. I don't wish you that shoot on anyone, but the US, Russia, possibly still Syria and North Korea have huge stockpiles of this. Being paralyzed in an empty hospital, watching a poisonous spider crawling on your body before making its way on your face. It bites you in your eyeball because you blinked. By white hot cheese grater. Cauterization prevents you from bleeding out until the grater reaches vital organs. Talking back to your mom. I like how you say your mom, so we can't make jokes about your own mother. Me and your mom spoke about how smart you are. I couldn't hear her very well though. Her mouth was full. Make a smaller clone of yourself. Have some fun. Go to a party, despite the fact that you eventually have to return to your larger body which is just sitting in a vat. Sing a song at the party about how you're begging and screaming for help, and that if that vat body dies, then you die inside your smaller body as well. Being crushed to death in overcrowded gatherings. You're surrounded by people who are in the same shooty situation, but they can't help, and they also want to survive it. Flaying. Your skin is slowly cut off in a single piece, if possible for later display, while you experience every agonizing element. It can take hours or days for you to expire, exposed to bone-chilling hypothermia. Seppuku no. I can't even get an injection without squirming. I was reading another thread about fricked up hometown stuff, and I'd have to say that being raped with a vacuum would be a real bummer. Breaking the world record for long life, only while completely paralyzed, blind, deaf, mute, and in horrible pain no drug can relieve. Note that this would ensure that you stay terrified much of the time too. Trapped inside a Toys R Us overnight. Floating away in space knowing that your oxygen will eventually run out. Being ran over by a steamroller or an army tank from the feet up. You're in a closed room where the ground is a giant treadmill made of sandpaper. It moves extremely slow, but you have to stand and keep on moving, or it is gonna drag you to its end and scratch the flesh of you. Slowly, you can walk for hours, maybe days. Eventually you will drop of exhaustion and sleep deprivation. But after the unbearable pain you will jump up, your body will flood with adrenaline and the process continues. Until your skin and flesh is being scratched off so slowly and completely that you die of exhaustion, blood loss, unbearable pain or all together. You're sitting down at a restaurant with your friends and family. Everyone is happy, jovial smiles and laughter all around. Then something goes wrong. You're dying. Maybe you're choking. Maybe someone poisoned your food. Maybe you're having a heart attack. It doesn't matter. You're going to die. You try to alert someone that something is wrong. They ignore you. They think you're fine. Your last moments are spent trying to get help, surrounded by people who ignore your pleas, smiling and laughing. Comatose from all appearances but actually conscious, locked in, so that the medical industry euthanizes you by cutting off your food and water. Stuck in a submarine watching the depths go down as you can't do anything or stuck in a submarine in general. Gastritis. Your stomach produces too much stomach acid and literally eats you from the inside, Cause of death would actually be bleeding, but it would be accompanied with constant excruciating pain for weeks, months on end. Every meal becomes Russian roulette. I'm currently struggling with PTSD from the 6 months my gastritis was untreated. Being put in a giant shredder, feet first has got to be. Similarly, get torn to bits by a pack of water-based predators, sharks, piranhas would have to be terrifying. My grandpa used to tell a story about working in a lumber mill. Somebody fell into a wood chipper and got chipped halfway up his chest before another worker was able to pull him out. He was able to instruct his rescuer to tell his wife he loved her before bleeding out. Yikes. I read about this torture, where you are being put in a bull-shaped metal thing barely big enough to fit your body in. Then the bull is being sealed, and fire is lit underneath it. You basically burn alive, just a lot slower. I've been listening to Dan Cullen's Hardcore History podcast, making my way through his WW1 episodes. He talks about the Battle of Passchendaele, how the rainy conditions and the massive artillery barrages turned the battlefield into a muddy swamp. The armies had to lay down wooden paths to move safely. Men would fall off these paths and sink in the mud like quicksand. He quotes one guy's memoir about passing by a soldier on the way to the front, who was stuck up to his knees. When the men were returning to the rear 2 days later, they passed the same soldier sunk up to his neck. TLDR, slowly sinking in mud, while your friends can't pull you out. A more interesting one, because everyone already mentioned stuff like burning, drowning, being buried or eaten alive, etc., is getting stuck in a waste pipe. You can't move, you're soaking with shoot and piss, all your senses are generally being assaulted, no one even knows you're there, and it could take days until you die.